Hello and welcome back to The Vacant Light. Today I'm reviewing the debut LP from a band called Crow Black Sky, and that album is called Pantheion. This particular album is currently available for free digital download on their Facebook page, and I'll make sure you guys have a link to that in the description box. So as you can see, I don't actually have any physical media in this video, just something I usually like to at least show to the audience here. So Crow Black Sky is actually a band from Africa, and this is the first African metal band I've ever had the pleasure of listening to in my entire life. The band is typically categorized as being a black metal band. However, this band takes influences from various styles of metal and music in general, so just calling them a black metal band really is not a fair or adequate sort of description of what kind of music they make. This particular album does take a lot of different influences and styles, and because of that it's quite an interesting mixture and something that's fairly unique, especially for me, someone who's never listened to music from this part of the world before. The main album is sort of split between a number of interlude tracks and sort of the main focal tracks of the release. And I found that to be quite interesting because it allows the band to show off a lot of different stylistic influences and to really experiment and not have their music fall always within a certain bucket. The vocals on this particular release, they do combine particularly styles of black metal and death metal vocals, and it's somewhere in between those two ends of that spectrum. For the most part, the vocalist does not sing on the interlude tracks and keeps his vocal work to the main central tracks on this particular album. Now, on one track, one of my highlight tracks of the record called Our Path Disdained, you can actually hear some clean vocals, which I thought added a lot to the mix, especially because of the progressive nature of this particular album. I felt that maybe they should have done that on a few more of the tracks. Not that I didn't enjoy the more harsh vocals, because they were well done, but I think clean vocals could have added a little bit more flavor to some of the songs that were well geared toward that, such as on the song Stars of God. That was a very progressive and very creative track, and I think clean vocals would have added another nice little layer to that. So maybe that's something they'll consider doing in the future. The guitar work is actually probably the most varied in terms of the instrumentation here. Immediately you can hear influences from both melodic and technical forms of death metal on this release, which is why I say this is not necessarily just a black metal album. You can definitely hear those different sounds in there. Also, on the interlude tracks, particularly the last two tracks on this album called Exodus and Home, you can hear a lot of various different sounds and techniques used in guitar playing that step beyond the typical aggressive metal styles you'd expect from this type of an album. Now, in that I hear influences from blues music. I can hear influences from progressive rock, which are quite prominent on this record actually. And in at least one place on the record, I really got to a point where I felt that there was a certain tribal or a certain sound that North Americans maybe are not quite familiar with. And for me, it sounded closest to Middle Eastern music. Particularly, I'm not familiar with a lot of music from other parts of the world, such as the Middle East, Africa, and so on. So that was the closest thing I could relate some of those acoustic guitar parts to, which I found was quite interesting. The bass player, unfortunately, is, for me, a little too low in the mix, which actually on this record I found the guitars as well were too low. There were many moments where I thought the guitar playing could have been a little bit more prominent in the mix, and that's quite an unusual problem because most metal bands have the opposite issue, where they crank the guitars way up in the mix and drown out, the drums and other things. But I found generally that the guitar playing was well done, but it could have been a bit higher in the mix, and same goes with the bass playing. There were one or two moments where I found the bass playing was very audible and distinct, but unfortunately I would have liked to have heard a little bit more of that on the record. Now the drumming in particular was very technical and very well done, and again showed a variety of styles, and the drummer was quite good at playing fast, playing slow, adding a lot of good fills to the mix. So overall, I thought the drumming was very well done. My main gripe with the drumming was that I felt the skins were quite tight on the snare and sounded a bit clicky. That was a minor irritation for me on this release. And mind you, these are just production issues. Like, it is the band's first LP, so those are kind of expected. I'm just sort of offering that up as advice, maybe if they want to think about toning their sound a little bit or tweaking that on future release. And again, this is just my opinion. Now, in general, the global sound of this release is quite epic. And if I had to compare this to, say, a more well-known band that I listen to and enjoy, I would actually compare this to Ex Deo, where you have that level of heaviness. There's a certain epic vibe put on top of it, something a little bit progressive and something that adds a bit of flair on top of the standard metal influences. The keyboard playing on this record is generally pretty good. Some of the more acoustic styled parts in the interludes were the highlight of the keyboard playing for me personally. Now, what I found sometimes is that it did wash out the guitar playing to some extent, and there's some points, just 1 or 2 points on the record, where I felt that it mirrored the lead guitar part a little bit too closely, which seemed to make the song sound a bit streamlined, which I didn't like as much as other parts. But overall, the keyboard does add a good layer of atmosphere to the music. So, all in all, I'd like to say that Crow Black Sky is quite a creative band, and I was very glad to hear the record. It does combine a lot of different styles, a lot of different ideas, and it has a nice balance between the heavy and the more experimental and acoustic parts of the record. So overall, I say this is a great band, and of course there is room for improvement, but I mean, this is their first LP, and they're going to grow and they're going to flourish. So thanks a lot for watching this video. I do recommend you check out the album because it is free. So yeah, have a good one. Thanks, bye.